Now the Mavericks are 1-4. With Luka and Kyrie both playing together, they're 1-4. They haven't been the best in the last 5 games. That's a bad record for having two superstars that are dynamic and should be able to win you more games than that. Playing those guys together, it hasn't really looked like it's been working. Luka is so ball dominant, and then Kyrie, he needs the ball in his hands as well. And you see them down the stretch when it comes to those pivotal moments in the game where they're like, oh, they don't know what to do with each other on the floor. Luka doesn't give Kyrie the shot to make the big shot to win the game. We've seen that against the Lakers. We've seen that against the other teams. They took the L too. So it's just interesting to see how this dynamic is going to play out. I mean, and even Jason Kidd is, sensing some, this has probably been some stuff that's been boiling over, but him calling out Luka for being immature. This team they got a lot of old seasoned veterans. They got a lot of guys that have been in the league for a minute that have been doing this for a minute. So the only really person they were talking about, the only real person Jason Kidd was talking about that was when he was mentioning that was, Luka Doncic. So it's going to be interesting to see how this team plays out. But right now, being 1-4 in the last 5 games, and then, you're losing to the Timberwolves, you're losing to the Kings, you're losing to some, the only team they really beat in the last 5 games was the Spurs. And that's a for sure win because they're tanking. So really, this duo has done nothing. I was really hyped about seeing these two play on the court together, but they just haven't been able to figure it out. And it's been really sad to see. But the other team that's struggling with their big addition, via buyout market, is the Clippers getting Russ. And I was really high on this move. I'm, a huge Clippers guy, but I was really high on this move because I thought, Ty Lue, one of the best coaches in the NBA, was going to be able to make it work. But in the first 3 games, I'm a little nervous to see what's going to happen with them because it hasn't looked good. People are going to use Russ as a scapegoat for them losing the last 3 games, but that's not fair because he's been playing very well. He's looked like his old self, 14 assists in the first game. He played very well. And the game before that, before last night, he didn't play in the fourth quarter. He was, after the third quarter, they took him out of the fourth quarter. They took him out of the overtime. They took him out of overtime as well. So it's, they haven't been giving him the opportunities, and it's just when he's on the court, a couple turnovers, but when he's on the court, he's facilitating, he's making the plays, he's getting guys open shots. Kawhi has been spectacular. But when you need him to be spectacular the most, him and Paul George, they've come up short. Russ doesn't need to be the guy making the game-winning shot. No, you need Paul George and Kawhi to make those game-winning shots. And given, the Kings game, 2 overtimes, then you had the Nuggets game going to overtime as well. So, Kawhi was a little beat up, his knees. He was probably going through it, But, those guys need to come up the most in those kind of situations, and they haven't. And, people are just using Russ as, the scapegoat, saying, it's, oh, look at him. He's 0-3 so far with the Clippers. He's looking like old Russ, which is not fair to him at all because he's been playing very well, for what we've seen him out of the Lakers. And then, Ty Lue, you look at him in the first 3 games with, Russ and this big 3. He really has been struggling. He's been making some coaching errors. He's been putting Paul George on minutes restriction. He's, he didn't play Russ in the whole fourth quarter and the overtime. So, he's been making some mistakes, but, I would give this whole situation more time to see what is going to happen with them because it's been 3 games and, it's going to take more time for them to, gel with each other and play together. But I think, Russ being, able to show what he's been able to do in the first 3 games and show he can play at a high level and he can fit in this offense. You just need Paul George and Kawhi and them just to be back to what they were and dominate in those situations. And I mean, these games, they're not getting blown out. They're not losing, terrible games. They're, hanging in there with the Nuggets, the Kings. The Kings have been the Kings. They've been surprising everybody. But in these games, it's not been like they've been, blown out or anything. So you see the potential there. Even against the Nuggets, the number 1 team in the West, you've seen them be able to hang with them going to overtime, just Jokic making those big plays at the end of the game. But you see that potential for this Clippers team to be, that dominant team, but you just got to get back in the drawing board. You got to, make the minor touches and stuff. You just got to be able to fix some of those mistakes. You got to have Paul George dominate when you need him to dominate. You got to have Kawhi, be able to make those game-winning shots, be the clutch player he can be. And, Russ, just let him fit in. You let him, get the assists, 17 points, 14 assists. He's having double digit assists in the last 3 games. He hasn't been the problem, I don't think. So that's something people need to stop, putting that narrative out there. I think the Mavericks going 1-4 in the last 5 games is a way bigger deal and something to be more concerned about than the Clippers. There's times in these Mavericks games that you see Kyrie and Luka. That doesn't work. That shouldn't be out on the floor. There's moments when you see that doesn't work. And, when you're dealing with Kyrie, that whole situation, you never know what to expect. But, it's just what we've seen so far. I think that's a bigger concern. And with the Luka issues, you're having Jason Kidd come out and say, the immaturity, talk about him not getting the fouls, all that stuff. All those issues could boil over and get in the way of them getting, that success in the playoffs, going deep runs. Whereas the Clippers, it's just some minor fixes they have to do because the product we've been seeing, I have more trust in that than I have in the Dallas Mavericks. And I think the Clippers will go further in the playoffs than the Mavericks. It would be interesting to see those two face off against each other, and I would take the Clippers in 7. But, just off seeing what's going to how this team could gel together, I think I trust that more in the Clippers than I do the Mavericks because Russ, he's not a selfish player. Kawhi's not a selfish player. And Paul George is not selfish players. Russ and Paul George already have that connection. Kawhi, he just needs to, make the clutch shots, but he's been balling out of his mind. We've seen, they put up 175 points a couple games ago, and then they took the Nuggets to overtime, the number 1 team in the West. Whereas the Mavericks, like I mentioned, Kyrie and Luka don't even look like they should be on the same court together. And Luka is so ball dominant that it's going to, fuck up, the connection with Kyrie. 2 guys that need the ball. It's usually tends to, it's not to say that Kyrie and Luka are selfish. It's just how the usage rates between those two players is very high. So that's why I think the Clippers situation, I have more trust in that. Let me know what you think. What team do you think will make it further in the playoffs? And what team do you think you should be the most concerned with in the last stretch of games? Now, it's just something about the Sacramento Kings team, the beam team they're calling them. They're just balling out at another level. Nobody expected them to be the 3rd seed heading into this year. Nobody expected them to be playing at this level. De'Aaron Fox continues to improve year after year.